Most people don't prepare wrong because they ignore survival. They prepare wrong because they misunderstand it. They focus on what looks important, what feels powerful, what seems like it would make a difference. But survival doesn't reward appearance. It rewards function. And that's where the mistake begins. Because when people imagine disruption, they picture extreme scenarios, dramatic moments, urgent decisions, high-pressure environments. And that pushes them toward items that feel serious, gear that looks capable, tools that seem advanced. But in reality, most situations are not extreme at the beginning. They are slow, uneven, inconvenient. And the items that matter most in those situations are not the ones people expect. Now here's the pattern. People overestimate rare problems and underestimate common ones. They prepare for what might happen once and ignore what will happen every single day. That imbalance leads to wasted effort, money spent on things that don't get used, space filled with items that don't solve real problems, and attention pulled away from what actually matters. Now here's the key issue. Every item you store has a cost, not just in money, but in space, weight, and decision-making. If something doesn't serve a consistent function, it becomes a liability, because it replaces something that could have been useful. Now look at how most people choose what to buy. They follow trends. They copy others. They react to what looks impressive, not what performs under pressure. And that leads to a common outcome. When disruption happens, they have things, but not the right ones. Now here's the shift. Smart preparation is not about having more. It's about having less, but better. Items that solve real, repeatable problems. Access to water, reliable light, basic health, food stability, information. Anything outside those categories must justify its place. Otherwise, it's just taking space. Now understand this. The biggest mistake is not being unprepared. It's being prepared with the wrong things. Because that creates false confidence. And false confidence delays correction. So the goal isn't to collect. It's to filter. To remove what doesn't matter before it becomes a problem. Item 1. Overly complex multi-tools. At first, they seem perfect. One tool that does everything. Blades, screwdrivers, cutters, extras, all in one compact design. It feels efficient, like you're covering multiple needs with a single item. But in real situations, complexity becomes a problem, not a solution. Because multi-tools try to do many things, but rarely do any of them well. Now here's what actually happens under pressure. You don't need 10 functions. You need one function that works reliably. And that's where multi-tools fall short. The blade is often smaller than needed. The grip is less stable. The strength is limited compared to single-purpose tools. So when you actually need to use it, it becomes slower and less effective. Now here's the deeper issue. Multi-tools require unfolding, adjusting, switching between parts. That takes time. And under pressure, time matters. Simple tools are immediate. You pick them up, you use them. No setup. No delay. Now consider this. In low-light conditions or stressful situations, fine motor control drops. That makes small, complex mechanisms harder to handle. What felt clever in normal conditions becomes frustrating when you actually need it. Now here's why people still choose them. Because they feel efficient. They reduce clutter. They look like a smart solution. But that's perception, not performance. Now here's the key insight. Reliability beats versatility. A simple, strong tool that does one job well outperforms a complex tool that does many jobs poorly. Now this doesn't mean multi-tools are useless. It means they're often overvalued. People rely on them as a primary solution when they should only be a backup. Now here's where regret forms. When something breaks, needs fixing, or requires force, and the tool in hand isn't strong enough, precise enough, or fast enough. That's when people realize they chose convenience over capability. And in real situations, capability is what matters. Item 2. Excessive tactical gear. It looks prepared. That's the appeal. Heavy-duty vests, multiple pouches, specialized clothing, gear setups that feel like they belong in extreme scenarios. It creates a sense of readiness, like you're equipped for anything. But in most real-world disruptions, that kind of gear becomes unnecessary, and sometimes even a disadvantage. Now here's why. Most situations don't require mobility under combat conditions. They require stability, staying in place, managing resources, maintaining routine under stress. And excessive gear is not designed for that. It's designed for movement, intensity, and short-term use. Now here's what actually happens. That gear becomes heavy, uncomfortable over time, difficult to manage in normal environments. Instead of helping, it slows you down. Now consider the deeper issue. Tension. Highly visible gear stands out. And standing out is rarely an advantage in uncertain environments, because attention creates risk. Now here's the key detail. People imagine worst-case scenarios and prepare for them visually. But real disruptions are usually less dramatic and more prolonged. You're not moving constantly. You're managing daily needs with limited systems. And in those conditions, comfort and practicality matter more than appearance. Now here's why people fall into this mistake. Because tactical gear feels like control. It creates confidence quickly. But it's a surface-level confidence, not based on actual function in long-duration situations. Now here's the insight. Preparation is not about looking ready. It's about staying functional over time. Lightweight, simple, repeatable solutions outperform heavy, complex setups. Now here's where regret shows up. When gear becomes something you avoid using. Too heavy, too noticeable, too impractical. So it sits unused, while simpler options would have worked better. And that's the pattern. If something looks impressive but doesn't integrate into daily function, it becomes extra weight, not an advantage. Item 3. Large stockpiles of low-quality food. At first, it feels like the safest move. Buy more. Fill shelves. Stack supplies. Maximize quantity. Because more food feels like more security. But quantity without quality creates a hidden problem. And most people don't realize it until it's too late. Now here's what actually happens. Low-quality food often means low nutritional value, low calorie efficiency, short satisfaction. So even though you have a lot, it doesn't last the way you expect. You eat more to feel full. You burn through supplies faster. And suddenly what looked like abundance becomes limited. Now here's the deeper issue. Energy. Food is not just about filling your stomach. It's about maintaining strength, focus, and stability over time. If the food you store doesn't provide that, you're constantly compensating. Now consider this. In stressful conditions, your body needs more support, not less. And poor quality food does the opposite. It adds volume without real function. Now here's why people make this mistake. Because low-quality food is cheap and easy to store. It feels like progress. You see stacks building up quickly. But that visual progress hides a functional weakness. Now here's the key detail. Storage space is limited. Every item you keep should justify its place. If something takes up space but doesn't deliver real value, it reduces overall efficiency. Now here's the shift. Less food, but better food. Higher calorie density. Longer shelf life. Better nutritional value. That combination creates duration, not just quantity. Now here's where regret appears. When people realize they have to eat more than planned, just to maintain basic energy, and that accelerates consumption. Now their timeline shrinks. And once supply starts shrinking, pressure builds. Because they prepared for volume, not performance. And in real situations, performance is what determines how long you can stay stable. Item 4. Too many single-use gadgets. They seem helpful at first. Small tools designed for one very specific purpose. Open this. Cut it. Light something. Fix a tiny problem. Individually, each one feels useful. But when you start collecting too many of them, they become a problem, not a solution. Now here's why. Each single-use gadget solves a narrow situation. But real disruptions don't present problems one at a time. They overlap. They change. They require flexibility. And single-use tools don't adapt well. Now here's what actually happens. You end up with multiple items that do similar things, cover rare situations, take up space without consistent use. And when you need something quickly, you waste time choosing. Or worse, you don't even remember what you have. Now consider the deeper issue: access and speed. In uncertain conditions, you don't want to think too much. You want immediate action. But when you have too many specialized items, decision-making slows down. Now here's another layer: storage. Every item you keep has to be stored, organized, and maintained. More items mean more complexity, and complexity reduces efficiency over time. Now here's why people fall into this trap. Because these gadgets are marketed as solutions. Each one promises to solve a problem easily. So people collect them thinking they're increasing readiness. But in reality, they're increasing clutter. Now here's the key insight. Versatility beats specialization in most real-world scenarios. A few reliable tools that can handle multiple tasks outperform a large collection of narrow-use gadgets. Now here's the shift. Instead of asking, what tool solves this one problem? Ask, what tool solves many problems reasonably well? That mindset reduces clutter and increases function. Now here's where regret shows up. When you have a lot of tools, but none of them are exactly what you need in that moment, or they're too specific to be useful outside their narrow purpose. And that creates frustration, because you prepared, but not efficiently. And efficiency is what matters when conditions are uncertain. Item 5. Information overload. It feels like an advantage. More information, more updates, more awareness, multiple apps, news alerts, social feeds, constant checking. It creates a sense of control, like you always know what's happening. But in unstable situations, too much information becomes a problem, not a solution. Because information is only useful if it's clear, consistent, and actionable. And when you have too many sources, you don't get clarity. You get noise. Now here's what actually happens. Different sources report different things. Updates arrive at different times. Some information is incomplete or delayed. And instead of helping, it creates confusion. Now you're not informed. You're overwhelmed. Now here's the deeper issue. Decision-making. When information is unclear, decisions slow down. You hesitate. You double-check. You wait for confirmation. But waiting under pressure reduces options. Now consider this. In fast-changing situations, simple decisions matter more than perfect ones. But information overload pushes people toward trying to be perfectly informed. And that delays action. Now here's why people fall into this trap. Because access to information feels like preparation. It feels productive. But consumption is not the same as readiness. Now here's the key detail. Every source you follow adds complexity. And complexity reduces speed. Now here's the shift. Fewer sources, but more reliable ones. Clear inputs that help you act. Not endless streams that keep you stuck in analysis. Now here's the bigger picture. Look at all 5 mistakes together. Overly complex tools. Excessive tactical gear. Low-quality food stockpiles. Too many single-use gadgets. Information overload. They all share the same pattern. They look useful, but reduce efficiency. They add weight, physically or mentally. And under normal conditions, that weight is manageable. But under pressure, it becomes a problem. Now here's the final insight. Preparation is not about adding more. It's about removing what doesn't serve you. Because every unnecessary item creates friction. And friction slows you down. Now imagine 2 people. One has fewer items, but each one is reliable, simple, and useful. The other has more, but mixed quality, complexity, and overlap. In a stable environment, both seem prepared. But under pressure, only one stays efficient. Because efficiency is what keeps systems working when everything else slows down. And that's what most people realize too late. They didn't need more. They needed better choices. Earlier. Before it mattered.